Hi, my name is Deeann Mathews, and I'm discussing the Freedom Guide for Music Creators, which is my small book, small but mighty book on the music business today, on how musicians of all varieties, composers, artists, songwriters, can get a grip on how to protect themselves in the music industry and how to go around some of the major traps. After we've covered the nuts and bolts of making, sharing, and creating and protecting music, we're going to talk about music opportunities, strategy, and money that is available to you, along with some ideas that may help you get that money. We actually won't cover that tonight because we won't get that far into the book, but we will get into definitely protecting your music tonight. Once you grasp the information presented here and look into the resources you'll find at the same time, you will have a knowledge base many musicians would love to have before they get into sad situations such as having music profits and proceeds stolen from them by record companies, fellow songwriters, and sometimes well-meaning people from their school, church, and favorite social networking site. The minute you get that music, poem, story, or image out of your head and into a tangible form, you have not only created a work of art, but an intellectual property. Such a property is as real and potentially as valuable as any piece of physical property that you own. While we are not all equal in terms of our physical possessions, everybody has the opportunity to create and own their own intellectual properties. Today, when someone invents a new property or system, the ideas involved are considered as intellectual property known as patents. When someone writes a new song, the ideas involved are considered as intellectual properties known as copyrights. The tangible items of music, sheet music, and various types of recordings would not exist but for the ideas that musicians create. Copyrights are the bedrock of and the most valuable thing in the music business, at least in terms of generating income. Chapter 4, Why the Record Companies Are Rich and You're Not, Part 1. Before you have any kind of record contract with the record or publishing companies, have the contract looked over by a lawyer who has understanding and experience with the ins and outs of music law and business. The Freedom Guide is not a substitute for good legal advice, but you may learn some things that you will need to talk to your lawyer about. Contracts for artists, songwriters, composers, and arrangers with big companies generally break down in this way. In return for a publisher or record company's access to stores, necessary equipment, studios, distribution outlets, and ability to get music to folks needing music in film, radio, and various other things. Music creators or recreators give administrative control and partial ownerships of their copyrights to the company. In this book, we will concentrate on the basic forms of contracts, but you might want to pick up Peter M. Thal's What They'll Never Tell You About the Music Business for a detailed look at the different types of contracts musicians seek with big companies. Contracts with publishers consider royalties as having two parts. The writer's share of the royalties belongs to the creator of the piece of music, and the publisher's share of the royalties belongs to the publisher of the piece of music. The standard split is 50% for each party. If your music produces enough in royalties to repay the advance, the record company should begin paying you your share of royalties. But you may never know when these payments should start coming if you don't have an audit clause in your contract. Many companies may not tell you when you have earned enough in royalties to be paid. They may give you thousands or tens of thousands in advances, but be able to keep millions and millions over decades. Why would they disturb a situation like that? You have to be the one to shake things up, and not just about the advances. If you are an artist, you may have a further problem. United States copyright law provides that the owners of copyrights, be they musicians or companies, are to be paid for every record distributed and sold. Producers have also secured the custom of being paid from the first sale. But the artist gets hit with a problem called recoupment. Major record companies and publishers may pass you in advance. Many artists never get paid. An audit clause will at least give you the right and the ability to see if your album has broken even. But a better strategy is to get ahead of recoupment problems. The better idea you have of what support you need, from your record label of choice, the less you will be dazzled and confused if your record company starts offering you big shiny things that may or may not help you, but that will drain you of royalties in the long run. Theft of the rights inherent in music is perhaps the easiest and possibly the most devastating. All someone has to do, and your associates and co-writers are more likely suspects than the stranger who hears your song while passing by your window, is record a performance of your song or steal your sheet music and put a different name on it. It happens every day to composers that haven't yet read the next paragraph. To protect your work from theft, promptly register your copyrights with the appropriate government agency in your country of origin. In the United States, the Copyright Office of the Library of Congress handles these affairs. Here is the address and phone number. U.S. Copyright Office, 101 Independence Avenue, Southeast, or SE, Washington, D.C., 20559-6000. The phone number is 202-707-3000. Corporations and global commerce did not arrive until about the same time as colonialism and chattel slavery. Chattel slavery of Africans was eventually abolished, first in Europe and then in the United States after the Civil War. But the plantation owners of the southern United States were not about to give up their free labor just because slavery had been declared illegal. They came up with the sharecropping system, which persisted so long that at least 2 generations of former African American slave sharecroppers, these are baby boomers and their parents, are still with us. James B. Stewart, in his essay, The Critical Role in African Americans in the Development of the Pre-Civil War Economy, notes the legal and institutional barriers African Americans faced in going into large numbers into industry or even from working for themselves for decades after the end of slavery and Reconstruction. So, many had to return to work for their former masters after the Civil War. These African American laborers were to be compensated in this way. They would work the land and receive as payment a share of the crops, hence the term sharecropping. Do you see a parallel between this history and what you have been reading about in earlier chapters of the Freedom Guide? The music industry's policy of recouping all costs for an album's creation makes every bit of what companies provide to musicians a loan constructed in terms so that it cannot be paid back in many cases, and audit clauses with which you will never know if you have paid back the company's loan are still hard to get. Of course, the twist for the artist-songwriter comes from the controlled composition clause. No matter how much profit an artist-songwriter creates for the big companies, he or she can owe more and more with each album sale. So that while musicians go deeper and deeper into manufactured debts, many music companies get richer and richer, year after year, business cycle after business cycle. But there is hope. The Freedom Guide is not named as it is in vain. Musicians of all backgrounds and interests are finding ways around offering themselves up as ignorant victims to the big music companies. Just by reading this book, you are helping yourself avoid becoming another source of free labor to enrich the many music business owners who would like to exploit you. Take the time to understand what has been presented here and keep reading. More help is ahead. Please, this is for you. Take it, read it, learn from it, and prosper.
Thank you. That was great.